Hello BookTube, I'm Jonathan, and today I want to talk about some 90s sci-fi books, but just quickly before we get into that, as some of you may know, I live in Los Angeles and did have to evacuate due to the fires, and I just wanted to let you guys know that my wife, our little dog Charlie, and we are all safe, and our building where we rent our apartment, it survived the fire. So we're very lucky indeed, because there was a period of about 5 days where we didn't know whether our building had burned down or not, and we do know some people that lost their homes. So I just want to send my well wishes to anyone that's been affected by the fires and say thank you to the firefighters and the first responders. So in the meantime, we have found a short-term rental because we can't get back into our apartment. The area is still under evacuation orders. It's a disaster area, and we're not sure how long that's going to be, so we're just kind of playing things day by day. We've been buying clothes and toiletries and things like that as we need them, and as part of trying to feel normal again, did buy some filming equipment in order to try and get back to YouTube. So bear with me as I kind of set up the new setup, if you will, but hopefully everything's working properly and we can get into some sci-fi books. So let's get into the first 90s sci-fi book that I read recently, and that is Starfish by Peter Watts. Starfish is about a crew of rifters who work in power plants at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean, and they have all been bioengineered in order to withstand the physical environment, and they have also been handpicked because of their psychological histories. This book blends hard sci-fi with character-driven stories. In terms of the hard sci-fi, Peter Watts uses his background as a marine biologist in order to provide believable and detailed descriptions of the different kinds of technologies that will be required in order to operate in such a specific environment. The book does have a through line in terms of the plot, but a lot of the characters feel like explorations of the individual characters, and getting to spend time inside the minds of these characters is often as haunting and dangerous as it feels to be outside the power plant at the bottom of the ocean. So this is the second book that I've read from Peter Watts, the first being Blindsight, and something that I've enjoyed in both of these books is his prose. He has a remarkable ability to convey a dark atmosphere as well as a nihilistic philosophy through his writing. Now, I don't know if this book will be for everyone, as it is quite heavy on both the science and the trauma. It can be a little bit of a depressing read, although I will say I found it a little bit easier to get into and make sense of than I did Blindsight. However, of the two, I would say that I preferred Blindsight because it has this one central idea that everything just builds towards and just results in this horrific and memorable conclusion. Whereas Starfish, I think it has lots of good ideas, but there isn't as much of a big ultimate payoff of those ideas. Starfish is book one in a trilogy, although I think this book comes to a natural breaking point. I probably will check out the sequels at some point in the future, but I didn't feel compelled to continue with them right away. If you're looking for some dark, scary, claustrophobic underwater sci-fi, then Starfish might be the book for you. For me, it was an 8 out of 10. Up next, Red Mars by Kim Stanley Robinson. Red Mars follows the chronicles of the first 100 colonists that attempt to conquer the hostile environment on the planet of Mars. They have the opportunity to develop new technologies and a better society, perhaps, if only they can overcome some of the same mistakes of humanity's past. I think the first chapter of Red Mars does a great job of establishing life on the planet, as well as the struggle for political power and influence. It sets up the scene for a little bit of scientific exploration and a little bit of scheming. Unfortunately, however, the book never really delivers on the scheming. I was hoping to see factions form, people wheeling and dealing, but instead of political intrigue and power plays, I felt like I got people just arguing and love triangles. And it was all very believable. It was all very human, but I just don't know how entertaining it was to read. In terms of the science, I think this book was very well researched, and I did learn some interesting things about the planet Mars. However, something I felt like I learned about myself while reading this book is that while I do like science in my science fiction, I enjoy it most when it is serving the big ideas or helping to develop the plot. And Red Mars for me just moved so slowly, and the characters were so insufferable that the science just wasn't quite enough to keep me hooked. Now, despite me describing them as insufferable, I don't think that Robinson is a bad character writer. I would say that some of the supporting characters felt a little bit flat, but I would say that most of the main characters were fully developed and definitely felt believable. But the problem for me was there just wasn't enough development going on that I was invested in or I was rooting for. So when some of that did finally come along, I just felt a little bit emotionally detached at that point, and it just didn't have quite the impact that perhaps it could have. I think this book might appeal to readers that enjoy detail-driven writing and aren't as focused on plot development. For me, I think there were some elements that were executed well, but overall, it just didn't always hold my interest. I gave Red Mars a 6 out of 10. And lastly, Vurt by Jeff Noon. Vurt is a trippy cyberpunk novel set on the future streets of Manchester. It follows the Stash Riders gang and their Vurt Feather journeys, as well as quest to find a missing member of theirs. Now, off the top, this book is bonkers. The characters suck on color-coded Vurt feathers, and this creates a shared hallucinogenic reality that lies somewhere between Neuromancer and Trainspotting. The book features a bizarre array of creatures and technologies, and these are conveyed to us in a unique slang in a dystopian world, somewhat reminiscent of A Clockwork Orange. The world that Noon creates is surreal and mind-boggling, but not in a way that feels impenetrable. Rather, it just sucks you deeper and deeper down this rabbit hole. The sex and violence in Vurt is quite extreme, and often this can be hit or miss, but to me, it didn't come across in a way that felt unnecessary. Rather, to me, it felt like Noon just being unwaveringly true to the story and the characters. This book had an uncanny ability to make me feel pretty uneasy and yet not want to put the book down. I think it's an incredible artistic achievement for an author to take a reader out of their comfort zone and then make them enjoy being there. This book hurls a dazzling kaleidoscope of ideas at you, and I'm not sure they all hit the target, but I didn't really mind because they were all just so much fun to read. I think I experienced almost every emotional reaction throughout this book, from laughter to empathy, from disgust to amazement. To try and convey how engaged I was while reading this book, every time I think of Vurt, I'm reminded of the scent of a candle while I was reading it. And my wife's a fan of candles. It's not uncommon for them to be around, but I don't think I've ever had such a vivid sense memory before as I did while reading Vurt. And I think it's because I was just so locked in. I was almost experiencing heightened senses. Senses and sensations became almost more visceral while I was reading this book. I don't know, maybe I'm talking nonsense. What I'm trying to say is I liked it. I gave Vurt a 9.5 out of 10. So there you go, those are my thoughts on 3 90s sci-fi books. I think they'll all appeal to a particular type of reader, with Vurt being the most memorable for me. Let me know your thoughts on these if you've read them, and let me know some of your other favorite 90s sci-fi books in the comments. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, smash, or just gently click, the subscribe button. And if you really enjoyed it, consider supporting the channel by checking out the perks of becoming a Patreon member, where you can become one of my robots, androids, or cyborgs, like Nima and New Eden, Half-Ogre, Zakoway, and Colin's Compact Disc Collection. And you can find more sci-fi content over here.